Solomon, an ancient name that still signifies wealth and wisdom. He who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed. So wrote the third king of Israel, a man of great intellect and wisdom, who did not live up to his own counsel, Solomon, king of privilege, on this day of discovery. This is the land of the Bible. For thousands of years, these hills and valleys have been like a stage and backdrop for the longest plain drama of history. And because people all over the world are still learning from the events that happened here, Day of Discovery's Marty Hahn and Jimmy DeYoung have returned to a place called Nebi Samuel. They're looking for a high place where many believe a king named Solomon had a dream that would shape his future while speaking to our own.
Marty and I wanted to bring you here to one of the highest spots around the city of Jerusalem. This is Nebi Samuel, traditional burial site for the prophet Samuel. He was, during that period of time, as the children of Israel came out of somewhat of a theocracy and entered into the period of the kings, Saul, David, and Solomon. This location from the top of this building, this tomb that has been set up here for Samuel, gives us a perfect view of the valley over to the city of Jerusalem and the area of Gibeon, which of course played a very key role in the life of King Solomon. I'm not going to climb these stairs by myself. Come along.
All right.
Let's go.
The path to the rooftop was a long, narrow staircase. And as we climbed, I couldn't help but think of Solomon's rise to power. According to the Bible, he took the throne at age 20, and from there he would climb to the heights of influence, wisdom, and wealth unlike any of the kings of Israel, either before or after him. Hey, Jim.
Yes.
You know what?
What?
Come on, push.
Oh,
I'll push.
Bless you.
Go.
That's why I went
to the top.
first. I want to control the speed and have you push. Oh, this is a workout. Oh. Well, it was worth it, but hope I don't die up here on top of Nebi Samuel.
You are breathing, aren't you?
You're not kidding. A little heart pumping there. Look at
this is good.
Yes.
Good view. Okay, Jerusalem, this way, right?
Right over there.
Right there? Hey, Jim, that's what we came to see.
El Gibeon, location traditionally for the site of the community of Gibeon, dating back to the times of the kings, King Solomon in particular. As we walked up those steps, you realized we were walking to a high place, and from our vantage point, as we look down on those terraces that wrap around the tell there at Gibeon, you can tell we're in a high place. There is discussion between archaeologists as to whether that was the site where the tabernacle, King Solomon, would have offered sacrifices, or was it here because being in a higher place overlooking the city of Jerusalem, this is a logical location for that as well. The truth is that King Solomon is associated with, whether it was there or here, with this part of the country looking towards Jerusalem. Prior to his building the temple, he came here to offer sacrifices on an altar.
And then you got the dream here too, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
The dream when Solomon fell asleep, but it was in his dream when God asked him what he would like.
Yeah, and the desires of your heart.
Wisdom.
Yeah.
Very interesting. He was known as the king, the man of great wisdom.
Yeah. But there's a humility too. He said, who am I? I don't have the wisdom to judge, to rule these great people. And so because Solomon asked in this dream for good judgment, the Lord said, I'm going to give that to you. and I'm going to give you wealth and honor as well. But to think that that dream and the sacrifices and the tabernacle would have been right here in this region of Gibeon. Yeah. Hey, you know what? I'll bet if we walk down below here and get up just on the other side of that fence, I'll bet we can get closer and get a better picture. Okay?
Yes, indeed.
At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask, what shall I give you? Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king instead of my father David, but I am a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in. Therefore, give to your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great people of yours?" 1 Kings chapter 3.
There are a lot of important things about Gibeon. But what I keep thinking about is that request for wisdom, for good judgment. Solomon was asleep. You know, we think of this man and the character that he showed in not asking for long life or wealth or honor, and yet he was asleep. Why would the drama play out like that? Why would that be the history given to us? The only thing I come up with is that this is really about God. This is about a God who has a plan. It's a plan for a chosen people. He's teaching them how to worship Him, how to walk with Him. And what Solomon received in the good judgment, the wisdom that he got, was a gift. This was God's sovereign will playing out. God would then see how Solomon would respond to that gift of His goodness.
One enduring response was for Solomon to collect and write down words of wisdom. Some of that counsel is found in the biblical book of Proverbs, and over the years, untold thousands have been spared a great deal of grief by following Solomon's advice.
He who oppresses the poor reproaches his maker, but he who honors him has mercy on the needy. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who deal truthfully are His delight. He who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed. The Proverbs of Solomon.
Under Solomon's reign, the kingdom of Israel extended from the border of Egypt to the Euphrates River, and the riches of Africa, Asia, and Europe passed through her trade routes. But though Solomon is remembered for his wealth and wisdom, one of his greatest privileges was that he was allowed to build the very first temple in Jerusalem, the place that God had chosen to live among His people, an honor that God had denied his father David. Jimmy and I moved from Gibeon, the place of Solomon's first encounter with God, to the location of the temple that he was instructed to build in the old city of Jerusalem.
Okay, you know what I want is a picture of Solomon's temple, but it's hard to find.
Well, I don't think there were any artists that did anything at that time.
No, but I mean something.
The idea.
Yeah.
What we have from the scriptures give us an indication, the dimensions of it and everything else. Why don't you try this shop? While you're in there, I'll go down farther into the Jewish quarter and see if I can find something.
Okay, I'll meet you down there.
I'll see you in a little bit.
All right, okay.
The Temple Mount is believed by Jews to be the center of earth. This is the very place upon which Abraham had attempted to sacrifice his son Isaac to God. And this is the place where Solomon, after his father built an altar here, King David, Solomon built his first temple here. The first temple, which was built in the 10th century BC, existed for approximately 400 years, and it was destroyed by the Babylonians, by Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC.
Hey, Mark.
Hey.
Were you successful?
No. Got loads of second temple, third temple, even anticipation.
Oh, those are the ones to come, yes.
Yeah.
I think I was successful.
Where'd you go?
I went down here to the Temple Institute, just down the way. And
okay, all right.
I want to show you, I've got two pictures, this one first. This is the depiction of Solomon's temple. Now, we can only go by the dimensions that can be found in the Bible, but this would be what the artist's rendering of what his temple would have looked like back 3,000 years ago. The altar in front.
Oh, it's huge. Look at the people.
Yeah, well, get the perspective there.
Yeah, that's...
Now, this would be
the inside,
holy
the holy
place of the first temple.
And behind the curtain,
right.
the veil.
And you'll notice in the second temple, even back in the days of the tabernacle, there was one menorah, one table of showbread, one altar of incense before the veil of the temple, which is the location where the Ark of the Covenant would have been. But Solomon, according to 2 Chronicles chapter 4, had a multiplicity of menorah and tables of showbread. So
he
pretty much
he changed the Mosaic pattern then.
Well,
by multiplying them.
He was opulent
in
his own home building and everything else.
Let's take it down the steps.
See what the perspective
look at,
there
look
on the
at the
Temple
spot.
Mount.
Yeah.
To give us a better idea of how the first temple, Solomon's temple, would have stood there on the Temple Mount. See, the Dome of the Rock. Dome of the Rock would have actually been the spot where Solomon's temple would have stood some 3,000 years ago. We see the temple here facing to the east. In other words, would be reverse order from the picture that we're looking at, and it would be facing out towards the Mount of Olives there to the east. It took Solomon 7 years to build this temple.
Okay, and then Solomon's palace, that would have been
down the slopes to the south in the city of David. It's quite interesting. It took Solomon 7 years to build his temple, 13 years to build his opulent palace.
Okay, what does that say? And I guess by the way you said opulent.
You got the influence.
I read between the lines.
Yes.
But in the beginning, as I look at the temple and realize that it must have been majestic. It must have been one of the wonders of the ancient world. Solomon started right in building a temple of worship to his God. I'm reminded of the proverb, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, or the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. In the beginning, as Solomon took the throne, he knew who deserved to be honored. He started well.
Solomon began so well. Honored by heaven, he gave Israel books of wisdom and built the temple for worship here in Jerusalem. But his wealth and power eventually corrupted his judgment. Solomon tells his own story, his own spiral downward, in the words of Ecclesiastes.
I made my works great. I built myself houses and planted myself vineyards. I acquired male and female servants and had servants born in my house. Yes, I had greater possessions of herds and flocks than all who were in Jerusalem before me. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had done, and on the labor in which I had toiled. And indeed, all was vanity and grasping for the wind. There was no profit under the sun. Ecclesiastes chapter 2.
Today, all visible signs of Solomon's temple and palace have been erased from this site, and the whole Temple Mount area is under Muslim authority. For the people of Islam, the Golden Dome marks the third most sacred site of their religion. And because of its spiritual significance, this hilltop has been fought over for centuries. One of the most recent clashes is linked to truckloads of debris and fill that has been removed from the Temple Mount area. Archaeologists like Gabriel Barkai have been outraged over the act. To him, removing such cherished historic ground without a proper archaeological excavation is a crime.
Temple Mount, which is visible over there with the Golden Dome, that place was never excavated. The political and religious conditions are such
that they do not enable one to have a controlled archaeological excavation. The Islamic authorities of the Temple Mount dug an enormous pit in the southeastern corner of the Temple Mount when they prepared a major entrance to an illicitly built mosque built into a subterranean structure known as Solomon's Stables. And that pit yielded about 400 truckloads of earth saturated with archaeological material, and all that was dumped into the Kidron Valley in the distance of about 400 meters from the place where it was excavated. Now, that is a brutal and criminal act. It's an archaeological crime.
Dr. Barkai has made it his priority to reclaim and then sift through the excavated material from the Temple Mount to discover whatever historical evidence it might reveal. His project is controversial because he's claiming to find hard evidence that the Temple Mount was the site on which ancient temples stood, a claim that Muslim officials deny.
We as Muslims do not deny the presence here of Jewish here in Jerusalem before Islam, but this presence does not give them the right to take the Al-Aqsa Mosque or to have any right on it.
وأن اليهود منذ عام 1967 بل وما قبل ذلك.
And also since 1967 and maybe before 1967, the Jews archaeologists are looking for any stone, any proof, any evidence about their presence or let's say their history here, but they did found nothing.
Nevertheless, we do not have any evidence for Solomon's existence in extra-biblical sources. That fact brought some people to think that Solomon never existed, that Solomon is a myth made up in later periods by the authors of the Bible. In fact, for me, it would be too much to invent Solomon. I don't believe so. I don't believe he was a myth. I think he was flesh and blood. I think he was a most central figure in the Israelite history. And as the Temple Mount is not accessible, as there was no excavation ever carried out, it was very easy to say that, well, nothing was found. We brought over more than 75 truckloads of material which was dumped from inside the Temple Mount. What would they be looking for? Is there specific that you... We look for whatever was either made by man or used by man or testifies about man's history in the past and man's environment. So everything is collected. Every tiny bit of evidence is collected. From this sifting activity, we have already more than 600 ancient coins discovered. We have enormous quantities of pottery, potsherds, and various other objects. About 19% of the total number of potsherds which are identifiable and datable belong to First Temple period, to the time of the existence of the Solomonic Temple. The most significant discovery that we have is a tiny piece of clay lump upon which there was a seal impression. The whole size of it is less than half an inch. There are 3 registers or 3 fields, the top one, the middle one, and the lower one. The top one is totally missing. In the middle one we have 4 Hebrew characters, Lamed, Yud, Hey, Vav. And in the bottom one we have 3 characters, Aleph, Mem, Reish. This is the seal impression of a high-ranking priest in the temple, and probably his seal was embedded in a golden mounting or something which left this channel around it. And it has the name Lamed, Yud, Hey, Vav, Liyahu. Probably the continuation was Ge'al Yahu, and here there was the word son, and here of Immer, Aleph Mem Reish. The Immer family
The sons of Immer are well known in the biblical account. We have in Jeremiah chapter 20 a man who was in charge of the house of the Lord by the name of Pashhur, son of Immer, exactly from the time when from this small clay ceiling originates. So this is a direct regards to us and to your watchers from the people who were in the first temple of Jerusalem. This is a priest's seal impression which was found upon the Temple Mount. It dates back 2,600 years.
And so the search for evidence for Solomon and his kingdom continue in the city of Jerusalem. And yet it seems fitting that Solomon's legacy would be reduced to piles of rubble. These bits of glass, pieces of pottery, symbolize how God lifted Solomon to heights of power, to wealth and wisdom unparalleled in his day. Before Solomon's unfaithfulness to that same God, his personal pride, his uncontrolled desire, caused him to crash spiritually, eventually bringing down his throne and demolishing the unified kingdom of Israel. And the nation never recovered.
For it was so when Solomon was old, that his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not loyal to the Lord his God, as was the heart of his father David. Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord, and did not fully follow the Lord, as did his father David. 1 Kings chapter 11.
You know what that is, Mart?
Yeah, I do. Now, I'm gonna go down and get a closer look.
Okay.
Okay?
We're on the slopes of Mount Moriah, just above me the Temple Mount, where Solomon's temple would have stood. Below me, the Kidron Valley. And there in the Kidron Valley, what we were referring to was one of the tombs. Traditionally, it's the tomb of Pharaoh's daughter. 1 Kings tells us that Solomon married Pharaoh's daughter. She was one of 700 wives and 300 concubines. In fact, if you follow the slopes of the Mount of Olives to the south, where the cemetery ends and the residential area begins, that's the area known as the Mount of Corruption. And it was in this area, the Bible tells us, that Solomon would have offered sacrifice on the altars that he had built there for the gods of his 700 wives and his 300 concubines. The end of his life ending differently than it had begun.
So 3,000 years later, what can we learn from the life and the story of King Solomon? Well, as we've seen today, there are a lot of things we can learn from Solomon's life. One of the insights that comes through, and I think an insight that reflects the purpose and plan of God, is to show us that when the wisest of human leaders give into their own weakness, it shows that our confidence and our hope needs to be in someone greater. Above me, one of Solomon's great accomplishments stood on the Temple Mount. Behind me, a stone tomb that represents at least Solomon's strategy for peace, the marrying of the daughters of other kings for the purpose of peace, which eventually entangled him. Solomon's strength became his weakness. And that's something that all of us have to think about. Many years later, someone else walked the roads of Jerusalem. He talked about Solomon. And then he made some mysterious comments that, looking back, we can understand very well. He talked about one who is greater than Solomon, who is standing here, who stood here in Jerusalem. We look back and we can see what was happening. The God who gave us the story of Solomon, the third king of Israel, It's the same one who eventually brought us to himself through his Messiah, who turns out to be God himself coming to our rescue.
And in his better days, Solomon wrote, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths."